Welcome back to the Mini Transat mission. I'm Peter Gibbonsneff, and thanks for listening to another episode where we talk all things related to the Class Mini 650 and the Mini Transat. This week I talked with Jérôme Merker, who completed the 2023 Mini Transat. Not only that, he's the first person from Luxembourg to complete this race. Jérôme faced serious challenges, as you will soon hear. During the summer leading up to the big race, he had a fire on board one night while the boat was tied up to the dock. Over the next few weeks, during August, when most of France was on vacation, he cleaned up the boat, repaired some of the fiberglass, and replaced most of his electronics. The fact that he made it to the starting line in time is an incredible feat. I hope you all enjoy my discussion with Jérôme. Jérôme, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Hey, Peter. I'm doing fine, doing great. A bit nervous for this podcast.
But don't be worried. Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous at all. Hey, thank you for coming on. It's great to see you again. Congratulations on finishing the recent Mini Transat, and also for being, I believe, the first person from Luxembourg to complete the race. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, indeed.
That's awesome.
I'm the first sailor from Luxembourg to complete the Mini Transat, and that's a great thing. And also, I've been. It's a great opportunity to do some promotion in my country. That offshore sailing is even possible in our country, even though we don't have access to the sea. Also, our country is as big as Rhode Island, so it's not a very big country. So there's there are not a lot of sailors, but still, I hope that I manage to do some promotion for sailing in general, and maybe I can encourage the younger generation to step into offshore sailing.
That's really cool. So, where are you currently located? Where are you calling in from right now?
I'm currently calling from Luxembourg. I'm living here with my wife and our son, and it's a bit chilly for the moment, about 0 degrees, but the sun is shining.
Nice. That sounds great. So that's really interesting. And how I'm kind of curious. Let's start with your background, because I'm curious, how did you get into sailing, and did you sail in Luxembourg and some maybe lakes there, or what's your sailing background?
Yes, my sailing background it's rather atypical, but I think for most mini sailors, the sailing background is atypical, and that's the beauty of the Mini Transat. You have like 90 sailors, 90 different profiles, 90 different stories. And there's not one way to get to become a mini sailor, and in my case, I started sailing pretty late. I started sailing at the age of 23, 24, and currently I'm at 35. So a bit more than 10 years ago, and I only discovered sailing when I was doing my studies, university studies in the Netherlands. And Netherlands, they have a huge sailing culture. They're pretty famous for that.
Definitely.
And that was, there I had my first experience on a sailing boat. That was back in 2012, 2013. And since then I thought, okay, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a thing I like to do. That's a thing I like to invest myself more into. And that's where I started, how in French you would say coup de foudre. So I fell immediately in love with sailing. So I started to sail along the coast in the Netherlands, Mediterranean, a bit in Brittany, but also in North Germany. So it was more of leisure sailing, and mostly along the coast. And I did that for 6 years. So I've been studying and afterwards working, and I used most of my free time to spend on the sailing boat. And then, at some point you say, okay, is that all? I think there's more interesting stuff to do than do only leisure sailing and also along the coast. So I started to get interested into offshore sailing, and that was back in 2018. I was looking for a bit more adventure, so I was looking for ships that were looking for crew members to cross the Atlantic. And there I found a British boat that was based. They were doing the ARC
Okay.
So they're around the world, and the skipper was looking for crew members to get the boat back from Antigua, from Antigua back to Southampton, the UK. And I called him directly and was okay, cool. Yeah, join me in Antigua, and then we'll ship together the boat back to Southampton. And that was back in 2018, and that was my first offshore experience, and I really loved it. I really loved it. It was the other way around. It's the from Europe to the Caribbean. I think it's more relaxed because you always only have downwind sailing. But from the Caribbean back to Europe in April, May, it's a bit more harsh. It's upwind mostly, but still it was a very nice experience, and I really loved the offshore part of it.
That's cool.
And also, that year I was in a transition phase, so I quit my job, and I wanted to spend like as much time as possible on the boat. So I didn't only do offshore sailing across the Atlantic, but I did also solo sailing in the northern part of Germany. So I rented their boat, and I was sailing solo for 4 weeks between Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and just to master solo sailing techniques. Because I've been looking up YouTube videos, reading books, and progressing on a day-to-day basis, and learning by doing.
That's
trial
fascinating.
and error.
What a jump into it! Oh my gosh. So I'm curious. I want to get more into the sailing, but first, can you talk about what was your job and what were you doing for work at the time?
Back then I was nothing to do with sailing. So I'm more of a behind the desk guy. So 8 to 5 job. Working for the Chamber of Commerce as a political and economic advisor, especially on topics regarding to sustainable development. So I think it's a big topic here in Europe, but I think as well as in the US, is the green transition. So towards a more carbon neutral economy, and that has, of course, a huge impact on the companies. My main job was to analyze the impact of regulations on companies and how companies could adapt to this new regulation, and stay at the same time competitive. So that was quite enjoyable. It was super interesting, but
sounds like it.
I just want to have a bit more time for sailing, and that was back then. I decided to quit my job and invest myself more into sailing. So it was back in 2018.
Yeah. So how did you hear the class? So it's interesting. You jumped into the sailing. You started doing the solo sailing. At what point did you shift from the cruising and the exploration on the mini or on the solo side to, hey, I want to race minis? And how did that transition evolve?
That was quite interesting. It was quite because I heard about it, by reading newspapers and also talk to other fellow sailors. Oh, have you ever heard about the Mini Transat? That solo sailing across the ocean. I thought, okay, wow, that sounds nuts. That sounds crazy on those small boats across the ocean on those small boats. And then, I started reading more about it, and also a bit about the background of several sailors. What I really loved about it, and otherwise I wouldn't have invested myself into the Mini, is the simple fact that you have a interesting mixture of sailors. As I mentioned before, you have 90 sailors, 90 different backgrounds. Everybody has his own story to tell. And they're not the only professionals, they're also like amateurs. And some of them, they only started sailing maybe a few years before. Others, they would be raised in a sailing family or already like third generation sailors. So you had a bit of everything. And I really find this mixture really interesting. And my first experience on the mini boat was in 2018. What I did, I rented a mini, actually, a really old one. It was a Super Calin. It's one of the very first minis. It had the number 200 and something.
And what was it called? What kind of boat?
Super Calin.
Huh.
Yeah, it's old mini version. I think you don't see anyone racing.
Yeah, I don't
on
think
that.
I don't think I've seen those around.
But back then, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was, let's say, not a common boat, but some of the guys were racing on that kind of boat. But still, although the boat was already 30 years old, more than 30 years old, it was really fun sailing on that support. And I thought, okay, well, why not? It's small. It's as a solo sailor, it's quite, let's say, easy to handle. Because before I was solo sailing on bigger cruising boats, and it's not that easy on a heavy cruising boat to sail solo. Here it was a bit easier because it was more reactive and also much smaller boat to handle. So that I find really quite interesting. And then I was sailing a bit like 2 weeks on that support. I had my first experiences pulling out the first time a SPI on a Mini. I said, this is a quite experience.
Definitely experience.
Yeah. And then I thought myself, okay, wow, that would be an interesting project to run. And then I started also like to inform myself, okay, well, what else I have to organize in order to get everything in order, because there's a budget that you have to take into account. Then also maybe you have to register the training center. I think there were a lot of unknowns, or what are the requirements to qualify for the Mini Transat. And then I took that year to inform myself, because then I went back to work because at some time I was running out of money. Okay. So I needed.
That's always a problem.
Yeah, there's always a problem with sailing. At some point of time, you're just spending money.
Exactly.
Then you have to get back to work. And so, by the way, I was following since that first experience on the Mini in 2018. I've been following closely the Mini circuit that was back then 2018 to 2019. And 2019, I also continued sailing on other supports, but not on the Mini. And it was also 2019. I decided, okay, I'm gonna buy a mini boat. 2019, and that's the reason also I went to La Rochelle back then. That was the start of the Mini Transat.
Mm-hmm.
It was in La Rochelle, and I've been contacting some guys before, especially the P3. I was really interested in the Pogo 3. And just to get in touch with those guys, just have to get a feeling about the boat, also about the experiences, and also have an idea how they are organizing themselves, what they did to qualify for the Mini Transat. So simply to get first-hand information about how to set up such a mini project. Then afterwards, then it came to financing. I said, okay, now I have to check on my financing, how to finance the entire project. And I saw immediately, okay, maybe for P3 it's a bit too much, because I think back then, also 2018, you had to have at least 90,000 euros.
Yeah, and when we say P3, for the people listening that might not know, that's a Pogo 3.
Pogo 3, yeah, indeed. And also it was more, a performance-based boat. So most guys who were sailing on the P3 were very experienced sailors, they were competitive sailors, mostly guys who were, sailing for a podium.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking myself, okay, what are your objectives? You, being myself, I've not really experienced regattas, or I'm not a competitive sailor. I'm more of an adventurous guy. I'm going there for an adventure. So this might not be the right support for me. So I've been looking to other boats like P2s, Argo, Offset, which are, let's say, also very good boats, but in terms of performance, nowhere near the P3 or Maxi.
Yeah, I mean, they're older designs, a little different.
Older designs, exactly. Older designs, but perfectly fine and suitable to my needs. And so I was deep diving in those boats, and finally I took the choice to stick to the Argo. I found it was a really nice design. Was a pointy nose like the P2, or like as your design, the Roland.
Yeah, for the RG, yeah.
Well, RG. and was perfectly suitable to my needs, and it wasn't too old. Like, it was put in order 2014 or 2013. So at that time it was like 6 years old, the boat, and I think that's a good compromise for me. Just finding a nice boat which you can, to get over to do, let's say, to do. It's not too let's say it's not too expensive, but perfectly suitable to the Mini Transat.
I mean, I think that's all great points in terms of really understanding where you're at with a campaign and where your goals or objectives are. I think that's really important of matching those objectives with the boat itself, because the last thing you want to do is spend way too much money if it doesn't meet your objectives, or put yourself in a position on a boat that maybe is too technical, or maybe a certain kind of proto versus series. And so I think that's great that you're really able to think about that and really match it with what your objectives were. So let's talk a little more about the qualification process. So once you got your boat, I guess, where did you find it and where did you keep it? Which I knew where you're keeping your boat because you were just down the road from me. But I'm curious, how did that whole process go for those couple of years leading up to the Mini Transat?
So the process was was a long way to go. I think buying the boat is a first important step, of course. And as you pointed before, it's very important it should be in line with your objectives. I think to all the listeners out there, I think it's very, very important to fix yourself your objectives before starting the project, and that's a very important starting point. And then I think buying the boat is the first big step. And also, sometimes you just have to go. I had some doubts on buying the boat. I thought, okay, this one, it's a bit too expensive. The other one, oh no, it's a bit too old. Oh, that one has no transit experience. There were a lot of factors that I was considering. But at some point, you just have to go. Just go and buy and do your stuff. Otherwise you will lose time, because as you know, and also for the listeners outside there, the mini field is very competitive to qualify. There are a lot of boats, a lot of skippers who want to qualify, and you have to start your project on time, and that's why you have to get going. And back then, when I acquired the boat, it was just beginning of 2020. My objective was to participate in 21. And but as you know, 2020 was a hell of a year.
So did you get your boat before COVID shut everything down, or did you buy
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
I got my boat just before COVID.
What was that like?
From January to March was awesome. Until end of March, where they announced a complete shutdown, was awful. It was really awful. Because I had all my planning in head for 2020 to do all the qualifying process in 2020, but the announcement end of March with the pandemic has overthrown my entire plan to do the qualification in 2020. So I couldn't do anything on the boat because I had zero experience on the boat. I did maybe some navigating in January, a bit of in February, but that's all. And then I left my boat ashore until August.
Oh yeah.
So because one of my biggest challenges, and maybe I will come back to that on a regular basis during this podcast, is I'm living in Luxembourg, so it's 900 kilometers from Brittany. So it's a 9-hour drive with the car, and having a job, driving to my boat, to training on the weekend. It's very, very exhausting. And also during the pandemic, they closed the borders at some point of time, and all non-essential travel was forbidden. So I couldn't go to France for to visit my boat or to maintain my boat, stuff like that. So it was let's say a very difficult period. Basically, it was impossible to sail during that time.
And was your original goal the 2021 race, or was it always 2023?
No, it was 21 actually.
21. Okay, yeah.
21, as soon they start to open up the borders and also become more, a bit more relaxed with restrictions. Sailing become possible also for foreigners to enter France, and so I started sailing again in August. But then again, maybe you have been following that a bit in 2020. They did this special race that was replacing the SAS.
Yeah, can you describe that a little bit? What was that like?
I did not participate in that race.
Okay.
Because I didn't have time to train. Because all those guys who were living in France, close to the coast, they still could, go on sailing in May, June, July. Because they were living close by, but for me it was basically impossible. Not only the distance, because also my job was heavily impacted by the COVID. I had so much more work to do, and because back then I started a new job. I started to work for the Treasury, for the Ministry of Finance, and we had to set up all those aids for companies, for households, to support them during the time of crisis. So it wasn't like a standard 40-hour week. So we had to work more than usual, and so that had a huge impact on my sailing in that sense.
Wow. Yeah. So did you do a lot more sailing in 2021 then? A lot more races?
Exactly, yeah. Push forward. So 2020 wasn't a very good year for sailing. And then I had to take the decision, 21, there are still some spots open for the Mini Transat, because not all the spots, they were taken in 2020. And I told myself, give it a try. So I did a sabbatical in 21 to do the entire qualification process from March to June. So I prepped up my boat in January, February, and then went down to Italy to collect miles, and then came back to France to do also all the Atlantic coast racing, and also to do the 1,000 miles qualification around loop between Ile de Ré and Ireland. And I think I did all the miles within 6 weeks that were requested.
Gosh. That's a lot. That's a lot of sailing.
Yeah.
How many miles do you think you did total?
I think I did. I did the in Italy 500 miles. Then I came back for the Pornichet like 10 days afterwards, 300 miles. Then I did the Mini 500 miles again, and then just after the Mini I did the qualification process of 1,000 miles, and then I arrived in Douarnenez for the mini for the Mini Fastnet, and then again 600 miles. It was just crazy at that time. So,
that's insane.
I didn't have much room for error during those weeks, and then so finally, beginning of June, I ticked all the boxes. I did the 1,500 miles requirement and also 1,000 mile loop. But by then, I wasn't the only person who had the same idea. There were a few sailors doing the same loop. So there were a lot of sailors going down to Italy, then coming back to France, and by the end, I ticked all the boxes, but I was on the waiting list. And so I was waiting until the end, until September, beginning of September, to get maybe there were some sailors, to wait if they would open up spots. They finally did. They opened up 6 additional spots from the initial 84. And then my hope would also be to have a bit more additional spots, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 more. And maybe there would also be the one or the other dropout. But in the end, it didn't work out. So I remained on the waiting list. And that was, it was pretty tough.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So do you think, looking back on it, do you still wish you could have done that race, or do you think it was better in the long run to wait another 2 years with more experience, more time, or do you think it would have gone pretty similar if you just done it right then in 2021?
in the end, I think I'm happy about the fact that I did a 23. So because the entire season, 21, 20, 2020, I did it, but basically I did the entire season 21. So,
Sure.
and I did everything in a rush, and I think I could have made it across the Atlantic, but I think it would have been hard.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been pretty tough. And 23, it allowed me to prepare a bit more, also a bit better. Although I did not do that much races in 22 and 23, but still allowed me to take a bit more, to prepare the boat a bit better than it was back then in 21.
Yeah.
But in the end, yes, to answer your question, yes, I'm happy about it that I did a 23 and not 21, because I was more zen, let's say more relaxed during the start in Sable d'Olonne.
No, and I mean, I felt kind of similar way. I initially wanted to do the 2021 race. I definitely didn't have as many miles as you did going into that, into the process. But yeah, it's tough when you got to change your whole plan and add another 2 years onto it. It's mentally really challenging. But I think it was the same thing for me. I was happy to wait another 2 years for the next race. And I think there's a lot of people that run into that where if it's just you rush, go, try to get it all done in time. And some people can make the timing work and others can. And but there's always a mix of people that have done this for a couple of years and they have a little more time and experience in the boat. And then there's other people just jumping right into it, just trying to, do the miles as quickly as possible. So it's always interesting seeing the two different sides of that. So let's fast forward a little bit so I know 2023, you didn't do much racing, which I didn't do much racing either. I mean, just the waiting lists were just insane. I mean, I only did one race that year going to the Mini Transat. How about you? Which races did you do?
Yeah, me too. I only did one race. It was the MAP, beginning of June. Yeah,
which is what, 220 miles?
Yeah, 220 miles. It's peanuts.
Which is nothing. Yeah,
which is nothing. And in addition, this race was very, very fast. It only took like 24 hours. It was 24 hours race because the conditions were just perfect for it was only reaching basically at the end, and was perfect conditions for the SCOs, for the Maxis and the Vectors. They were like just incredibly fast on that during that
That's
race.
Tough.
But it was pretty tough, for our kind of boats, a bit older generations. But it was the only race. What about you? Which race did you?
I only did the Plastimo Lorient Mini race, the PLM, which is in April. So I did one race in April, which ended up being like 2 legs. It was supposed to be one race, but because of the weather, it ended up being 2 legs with I think it was like a 98 mile or like 100 mile leg, and then like a 150 mile leg or something like that. So it was really short.
I remember the conditions were a bit pretty tough weather conditions. Now they had to shorten the track, the course.
Exactly. There was a big front that came in. Okay, and then so you did that one race. And then can you talk a little bit about, I know you faced a serious challenge that summer, a couple months before the start of the Mini Transat, because you were going to do the Peru Challenge, right? The race from France down to Spain and back. Can you kind of explain what happened with that a little bit?
Yeah, indeed. There's a reason why I only did one race, because initially my plan was to do 3 races. The first one was the MAP, and then the other one was the Calvados. But that one I skipped because I just wanted to spend more time in preparing the boat and spend more time training, and then to prepare well for the pool. And that's, as you said, it's a race between Port Bourgenais, close to Sable d'Olonne, to Spain and back. So it's a perfect race to prepare the Mini Transat, because you will face a bit more like the same conditions, because you have to cross the Gascogne. And that's always pretty tough, to get a feeling for the conditions in the Baie de Gascogne, because you have always a front coming up through the Baie de Gascogne, which you have to confront, and that's always a nice training before you go to the Mini Transat.
And that area is pretty similar to where you start with the Mini Transat, anyways.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's only the start's only about 5 miles away from La Sablé-Olonne, and then you go through that southern part of the Bay of Biscay there. So it's kind of a similar area. So it's
Exactly
kind of like
similar
the
area.
first
Yeah,
couple days of
exactly.
the Mini Transat.
Exactly. The tour allows you to get into the mood, to get a feeling for the area and also where you're going to start. What happened there is just 2 days before the start of the Pur challenge race, I had a fire on board. So what happened was like 2 days before we had the regular check. We had to switch on all our navigation lights, which is compulsory, for every race, mini race. And I left it on the entire night, but I not only left on the lights, but the entire system. Only switch on the button and everything is lighten up. And I think which is pretty normal. Everybody does that.
All your electronics,
all your radio
switched
all
on,
kind of stuff. All kind of stuff. And those test.
And real quick, part of that is because they check the lights, like the masthead light, but then they also check the AIS to make sure you're transponding AIS.
That's why the reason I only switch on everything on to have the AIS checked. And what happened? I had a short circuit. Do you say it? A short circuit?
Yeah.
Short circuit on my autopilot, not my first autopilot, but my second autopilot. What happened is that the short circuit was on the compass, on the electronic compass of my second autopilot, and so there was a little local fire because I had all my medications close to that electronic compass, and also my sleeping bag was on top of it. So what happened? The fire went on the pharmacy, and afterwards on my sleeping bag, and that consumed. Luckily, everything was closed, so it was kind of how you call it. I don't know how you say it in English, but in French it says "ça s'est consumé," meaning that the fire wasn't an open fire. It was like a simmering.
It was like a closed, like simmer. Yeah, it was like simmering.
Yeah,
not a lot
simmering
of
fire.
Oxygen in there, maybe something like that.
Yeah, there was not a lot of oxygen in there. So the fire remained very local, and it wasn't very high degrees. So probably there were only like 40 or 50 degrees maximum inside the boat, because just above the fire source, I had a net, very thin net, and that remained. That one did not took fire, meaning that the source never went above, I think, 40 or 50 degrees, in my opinion. Otherwise, that would have taken fire as well. So what happened? But the pharmacy and the sleeping bag, they slowly burned down, and my boat was totally black inside.
I remember seeing pictures. I mean, I think the pictures made it look a lot worse than it actually was, because structurally it was all okay, right?
Yeah, structurally everything was okay. So the roof of the boat was intact. Nothing happened. I had only a bit of damage on the fiberglass around the keel, but it wasn't anything structural, I had to, of course, to scratch off the first layers of the fiberglass just to check how many layers have been damaged, and I think we were like 2 or 3 layers, so which is still okay. Of course, I had to do the entire repair work, but that was like 2 days of work. But that wasn't the big issue. But the big issue was the entire electronics. I had to replace the entire electronics. I had to also to check via my insurance. Luckily, everything went fine. But the big challenge was in August, and in August in Europe,
everything's shut down.
Everything is shut down in August. So I just keep calling my insurance. And then they guys, okay, they were very helpful, etc. But they weren't specialists in fires on boats.
Yeah.
So they had to ask a guy, an expert on this issue. So somebody from Brittany who's doing that on a daily basis. But those guys weren't that available as it's August, so it was quite difficult to get in touch with them. So. You understand, the big issue was to get things going, because like the fire just happened like 6-7 weeks before the Mini Transat started.
Yeah.
And that was pure stress, pure stress. and also to organize all the repair works around, also in August, because I couldn't do it on my own. I wanted to have really something properly done by professionals, and also in time. And luckily, the guys in Trinité, because I've been working there with the local, with Mille Solutions, which is just beside the place where I'm keeping my boat. Luckily, they were available, and they had like 10 days spare.
That is
August.
Really lucky.
Yeah, that's really lucky.
Real quick, because like La Trinité-sur-Mer, it's a great little sailing town, but it's also a little sailing town. So there's not a ton of different, like there's really good expertise, but you don't have a ton of different people with that expertise. And a lot of times you actually have to have people come down from Lorient, which is like a 40-minute drive away. And they don't want to do that in August. They don't want to come down for, a lot of times they don't want to come down for a mini. You know, they'll come down for a class 40, but they don't want to come down for a mini sometimes.
Exactly. Indeed.
Because it's not a big enough project. And so, yeah, you are super lucky with having...
Indeed. I was super lucky to find, that to get everything going. But I had to pick up the phone every day, just to organize everything and also to follow up. Because the big issue is because you have the expertise, the insurance, the electrician, the guy who's doing the structural, who's repairing the structural damages on the fiberglass, etc., etc. So you have to do all the coordination, and there's often miscommunication happening between the different guys. And so I had to follow up to be sure that everyone understood the task clearly, and also the urgency, most importantly.
Yeah,
the urgency.
So for the electronics, did you have to replace every bit of electronics, like every wire, or were you able to like save some of the original components?
I managed to save some of the original components.
Okay.
Like everything that was outside, like my GPS, my VHF, etc. That one I still the same. But I had to replace my anti-autopilot, my second autopilot. The original autopilot I was still working. We just had to replace some cables just to be safe. I think I replaced like 70 or 80% of the cables, just to be safe, to be on the safe side. And also, what else? I had to replace the AIS. I had to replace. At some point, it didn't work anymore, so that one I had to replace. And then also my fuel cell, and that's luckily. I got in touch with you because I was looking for a new fuel cell,
which is perfect because I was selling mine.
yeah, and that's also what's really great about the mini class. You just have to ask other fellow sailors, okay, is there anybody else who has that kind of piece? And there's always somebody who's willing to help or has that piece available. And that's also really great about the mini spirit, that there's, let's say, that the skippers are helping each other, especially in times of distress. And luckily, I had you to replace my fuel cell. And so thanks again for that, Peter.
Yeah, I'm glad the timing and everything worked out. And it's helpful that, I mean, you were only like 2 boatyards away from where I was keeping my boat. And, and so it was just great timing and the area and everything. So, I'm happy to help, and thank you for buying that. It all worked out for both of us because I was trying to get rid of that thing for a while. So, I'm curious.
Yeah, the fuel cell worked perfectly, had 0 issues during the 2 stages.
That's awesome to hear. Because I just gotten that refurbished and it sent it over to Germany the year prior to get refurbished, so it hadn't been used, but also hadn't been abused either. So it was, basically almost brand new.
Indeed.
So
I can confirm that. Lovely.
Yeah.
Worked lovely.
Yeah. So how do you like the fuel cell? Because I used it a little bit, but not a ton, just because I wasn't doing a lot of long races when I had it on my boat. I'm curious, do you like that? Would you use it again? Would you rather have a hydro generator? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if I had to redo a mini project, I would leave the fuel cell out. I think there are several. First, it's the weight. It's pretty heavy. It's not only the fuel cell itself, but it's also all the methanol that you have to take along, especially on a long distance race such as the Mini Transat. I think you need at least 20-25 liters.
Which that adds up.
Yeah, that adds up. Takes a lot of space. In the Mini we don't have much space, and also in the long term, in terms of cost effectiveness, it's quite expensive, a fuel cell and the ethanol. If you take it into account that like 5 liters of ethanol that costs you like 50 euros, I find it super expensive for what it is. And I think I would go with the option of full solar. With I think you did that, huh? You did that before. You refurbished your entire boat to full solar with lithium batteries. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
lithium batteries. But then I also added a hydro generator, which
Hydro
that ended up being
generation
the best
as
thing ever.
a safety net.
Which
Exactly.
I definitely needed. Yeah.
I think I would go that direction because it saves a lot of weight, first of all, and also on the long term in terms of costs, it's the same as having a fuel cell.
But it's also hard too. The solar was great when it's sunny, but we had so many cloudy days out there. I was surprised how many days we didn't have direct sunlight, or for a majority of the time. There were plenty of days where you have 2 or 3 days in a row of just cloudy overcast. And if I didn't have that hydro generator, I would have been screwed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was very happy to have the fuel cell. That's a big advantage of this fuel cell. But the big issue is with the fuel cell, usually it works. If it works, it's perfect. But as soon as you have an issue with the fuel cell, it's basically impossible to repair it on the boat. That's the biggest disadvantage of the fuel cell. But if it works, if everything, I think it's all about before you do the transat, you do this check of the fuel cell. You take everything on board what you need to do the maintenance of the fuel cell. But the problem, you cannot open it up and then repair it yourself. That's the big disadvantage of the fuel cell. That's why I would go. But I did not change the energy system before the start of the Mini Transat because I just want to leave the harbor with a system that I'm comfortable with. And I don't want to do last minute changes like 3-4 months before the start of the Mini Transat with a system that I'm not familiar with. So
that makes sense.
Why I did not do any. That's the reason why I didn't do any major changes before the Mini Transat.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then real quick, how did you so you mentioned you had 2 autopilots. Me personally, I had 1 autopilot installed, and then my backup was an external, hydraulic ram that you attached to the tiller on deck. So are you saying you had 2 physical autopilots down below? Yes, okay, exactly. How did that system work? Did you like that?
To be honest, the second autopilot, I only tested it during trainings, maybe for half an hour, just before the Mini Transat, just to get a feeling of it. But I always use my first autopilot, the NK system, because I got the NK calculator, and my second autopilot was one from Ray Marine. But the advantage of it is, you have 2 separate calculators. Because I know most people took a second autopilot, a tiller, and with the integrated computer somehow, of course, the big advantage of that, you don't have an entire separate system on board. You're saving weight, probably. But I think in terms of performance, it's better to have a fully fledged second autopilot on board. Because imagine you have really major issues with your first system, with the primary system. You don't get it running, you can always switch to your second autopilot, which has a fully fledged computer with a fully with compass that is well calibrated, etc., etc. So something that's fully fledged and that you can really properly use in case of urgency.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that. I wish I had that on my boat. So if I do this again, I'm definitely going to have a second built-in autopilot, because that is a game changer right there. Being able to just switch it over and have it turn on right away, and because when the autopilot stops working, you're screwed out there solo sailing on these boats. It's not like you can just tie off the tiller and balance the boat. Like, these boats don't balance like you could with a more traditional sailboat, where you can maybe tie off the tiller for a few minutes here and there, and it just doesn't work very well.
Yeah, that's true. It's only it's only useful, it gives you a bit of time to repair your primary autopilot. But if you don't manage to to repair your primary autopilot, then the Transat is going to be very, very tough.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So speaking of the Transat, I think let's get into the Mini Transat a little bit. I want to really hear more about your experience with it. Can you describe the Mini Transat race village and what it was like leading up to the start for those couple weeks that we were there? How was that for you?
I think like as for most people, it was pretty emotional. I think like all the sailors, they spent so much time into this project, invested a lot of time and money, of course, to get to the starting line. And I think what was very special for me is to have my family in Sable d'Olonne. So I have my wife, my son, also my parents, sisters who came along, and so they were saying goodbye on the pontoons when we were leaving Sable d'Olonne. And I think, I don't know how you felt it, but like leaving the channel of Sable d'Olonne was quite impressive, and also I'd say quite emotional.
Definitely.
You spent so much time into this project, and now's the moment that you're leaving the pontoon and just, okay, now we're crossing the Atlantic. Wow, let's go for it. I know I was simply super excited and super motivated, because I thought, okay, I did everything what I could to get to the starting line, and now it's now you have to do everything to get across the pond.
And I think it's safe to say it's pretty unbelievable that you were able to recover after that fire, and just a few weeks later, the fact that you were, at the pontoons there, on the starting line, starting the race on time. I mean, that was an unbelievable feat in itself. Not even the race itself, just getting there is just incredible.
Yeah. For me,
so great work on that.
Yeah, indeed, it was. I was super emotional about that, because when the fire broke out, when I discovered the fire end of July, I thought, okay, this is the end. Okay, that won't work out. I won't get the boat ready in time. I won't get the boat ready in time for the Transat.
Yeah.
But I gained hope during the month of August, when I thought, okay, it's gonna work out. It's gonna work out, but was super stressful, because I still had a bit of September. Because after that, okay, we managed to finish everything beginning of September, but still I had to calibrate everything. The new electronics, test electronics, and just get good feeling about what has changed. And because I couldn't properly test my AIS before the start of the Mini Transat, and it made me a bit of nervous. And also my second autopilot system, I only tested for half an hour. Usually I would take a bit more time to test the second autopilot system. Luckily, I didn't have to use it. But still, it's all about being confident about your boat. That's the most important part. Getting to the Mini Transat, being in Sable d'Olonne, the day of departure, I think you have to be 110% sure about your boat.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that feeling. I was at 90%. But finally, the first day, I said, okay, everything's working out. Then I managed to get from 90 to 100%, and then 5-6 days into the race, I was at 110%. I thought, okay, wow, it's working out. It's
interesting you say that. I think a lot of people probably feel that same way too, because I felt confident going to the start, but it's really the first 24 hours. I feel like when you can have just about anything can go wrong those first 24 hours. But once you get to that second day, there's just so much, I guess, more confidence in in your boat, in yourself, when you see that first sunrise. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how was the start for you? Do you remember the start, crossing the starting line, and what was that like for you?
In Sable d'Olonne, it's already a few months ago.
I know.
Time flies.
I'm assuming you had your code 0 up, like close reach.
Yeah,
remember, most of the boats are on the pin end.
Most of the boats, exactly. I told myself, you came this far, so I stayed a bit more in the second row. I didn't want to have any collision with any other boat, so I kept it cool at the start. It's a long distance race.
That's smart.
Yeah, it's a long distance race. Take your time. Try to find your rhythm. I didn't want to take zero. I want to take zero risk at the start because, especially after everything what happened before the weeks before, I just want to get onto Canary Islands safe, and that's what counted. So I took it cool, of course, under the code zero, and the conditions were pretty nice. It wasn't too much wind. And so it was perfect conditions to get into the race. I don't know, how did you experience it?
I struggle. So my boat struggles in it when you're basically in that line of like a really close reach or almost upwind. That line right there, my boat does not like, and it wasn't. I really had a hard time getting good luff tension on my code zero at the time, and so I could not point the same as the other boats, and I spent too long trying to go at the same angle as them, where I should have just bore off a couple more degrees, sailed my boat to its proper angle that it likes, and then just get into the next weather system. Which, speaking of the weather systems, I'm curious, do you remember tactically, how was that for the first couple of days, trying to get out of the Bay of Biscay, going around northwest Spain with the front coming in? Because you remember that morning we were right next to each other. I think right after sunrise, we were sailing upwind, switching from the code zero to more of an upwind sailing. And I'm curious, do you remember tactically what you're thinking or how that whole process went for you?
Yeah, the first days, so up to the Cap Finistère, I think at the beginning we had basically light wind, and that, if I remember well, there was a period of zero wind, so we got stuck a bit during the day. And then I remember the night there was suddenly because we were going downwind under speed with 25 knots. I got pretty surprised by that kind of wind because I didn't expect that. Because I was maybe I misread the meteo.
Like the forecast,
the forecast, yeah, exactly. Because I did not expect like above 25 knots of wind under speed, because I was under full sail with the main sail up, and only under and the big speed up. And I remember during the night that I got a bit surprised. I thought, okay, that will work out, and then it got stronger and stronger. And in a certain moment, I did like kind of a Chinese jibe, both the speed went the other side, and got entangled around the forestay. And that was, I thought, okay, geez, it was 3:00 in the morning. And I thought, like, what a mess, because I didn't have the Genoa up in the air, which was a huge mistake, because usually you have the Genoa up in the air to prevent that kind of situation that the speed got entangled around. You say the forestay for the...
Yeah, forestay, headstay, yeah.
Headstay, exactly. And so I had to drop it into the water to get it back. And it was really annoying, like 3:00 in the morning. It was the second night, Jesus, what a start of the race, It was really, really awful, really, really awful. And so the entire night I spent to go downwind without the speed, because I didn't feel like it. I was exhausted. It took a lot of time to get back into the boat. And then when we were approaching the northern Spain, because we had this waypoint in the south of the Bay of Gascogne, which we had to get around, and then it started to get a bit upwind, so we had to cross a bit to get to the northwestern part of Spain, and of course the wind got stronger and stronger. And what happened there again? Yeah, I had some issues because at some point we were under code zero, and then my how you call it, the when you take out the Janneker,
like unfurling, like deploying it or unfurling it.
Yeah, deploying and unfurling it, but not the whole boom just wasn't properly attached, so it broke away. My where you attach the SPI and the Janneker, how you call it, the extension
on like the spinnaker pole.
Yeah, the spinnaker pole.
Okay,
exactly. The spinnaker pole. Sorry.
No, you're all good.
It's simply because I'm only used to use the French words and sometimes the German words for but it's Spinnekopol, of course. And that
Yeah,
broke
you're all
away,
good.
duck, under the Jenniker. And that was really, it was pretty annoying. So I had to repair. It took me an hour. And only from that moment on, I only got in the rhythm of the race, you know. And to be honest, I really enjoyed the part going around Cap Finistère under 25 knots upwind with the waves. Was just insane.
Did you only have 25 knots? Because I think I had like 35, almost to 40 knots.
If you take into account the gusts, yes, of course. At some point at 35 knots, it's just like, okay, wow, that's proper sailing. What we're doing. That's what I signed up for. And also gonna get the feeling to get around the Cap Finistère, because at the beginning I was a bit, you know, that's quite if you don't make it around, you know, it's pretty tough to get around this corner. And the moment I got around the corner and we had a bit more milder conditions, I told myself, okay, wow, you just did it. Because I don't know how you did it, because before we started from Sable d'Olonne, I was checking on all the ports around Cap Finistère in case of emergency, you know, La Corugne and stuff like that. I think if you remember the race 2 years ago, there was a huge front, and I think they had up to 40, 45 knots, and they had to go find shelter in the ports around Spain and Portugal. So I was looking up all the ports in case of I had to go into the port, and I was so happy when we just came around the Cap Finistère, and then it was at the beginning, I think it was a bit of upwind, but then afterwards the Portuguese Alizés kicked in, and that was just amazing with Portuguese Alizés.
Yeah, we had a couple of good days of downwind sailing there.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Really, and also it was a good training for the second stage, you know, just getting a feeling for the trade winds in the Atlantic. It was kind of similar conditions, and in those conditions, I a bit rediscovered my boat. You know, wow, it's performing quite well, and you know, you were pointing like 13 knots. 12 knots, 13 knots, like for 6-7 hours. That was like just amazing, this feeling. And that was a good run towards the Canaries. But I remember, I think one of the, I don't know which option you took. At the Cap Finistère, we had to decide either go along the Portuguese coast or go more offshore. And I think that was a critical point, because all those who were going along the coast, they got stuck a bit in the no wind zones. And luckily, I took the decision to go offshore.
That's smart.
And because I was weighing a bit the pro and contras of both options, and of course, I was listening to the VHF. Everybody was discussing, okay, should we go along the coastal line of Portugal, or should we go more offshore? And also remembering the weather forecast back then, they were also pointing, oh, watch out for the no wind zones between Madeira and Cap Finistère. So you couldn't go too much offshore. But on the other hand, they were also saying along the coastal lines of Portugal, there will be also no wind zone. And then, but the most people were saying, okay, maybe we can play the wind effects of the coast along Portugal. And I wasn't too sure about that, because first of all, I didn't read too much about those local effects, and I wasn't too much aware of those local effects. And second, usually if you go along a no wind zone of a high pressure, there's always a bit of pressure that goes out there. And secondly, the route offshore was closer to the direct route to the Canary Islands. So that were the arguments why I took the decision to go offshore. And I was also following other boats. I think the majority went along the coast, and I think the other 1/3 about of the boats, they went offshore. And I was sticking to that option.
Well, I think it's also interesting because that decision point that you had is about day 5, day 6 of the race, right? And so at that point, the initial weather forecast that we had when we left the dock are vastly different, I would say, by the time you get to day 5 or 6. It's, you have a good idea based off the forecast, but it's not exactly what it's going to be like 5 days in. So I'm curious, how was it for you transitioning from, okay, I have these detailed forecasts from leaving at the starting line to, okay, now I'm relying on a once daily voice forecast over the radio. How was that transition for you? And do you remember, were there certain days where you're just like, the forecast they gave us is just completely wrong, or was it all pretty similar with what you were expecting? How did that go?
The detailed forecast, but often it makes you a bit more, because at the start, you have a lot of information under your hands, and sometimes it makes it a lot more difficult to take decisions based on that. And I honestly, I prefer to have it a bit more simple. And that's why I appreciated the radio forecast, because it only forecasted, the essential information, and then the information per zone. So you had only like kind of 2 sources of information, kind of, which made the decision making a bit more easier. I don't know how you felt it, but regarding the forecast for the first days, I think they were quite to the point. So that what they forecasted, I finally experienced as well on the water. Then after day 4 and 5, I think then the forecast that you receive in Sable d'Olonne is, doesn't work too much anymore, and you have to listen to the forecast you get over the radio, and then work your way through it with information you get over the radio. And I think that's the thing you get used to. And I know how did you experience your that kind of situation? Are you the guy who prefer to work with more detailed information, or were you happy just to work with the basic forecast that you got from the radio?
That's a great question. So I always like having more information. I really do enjoy looking at the different weather models and different things like that. But at the same time, I do enjoy the aspect of it's almost like a freedom out there from all that information when you can only rely on what they're telling you. I do enjoy that also as well, and just trying to interpolate it and understand what they're saying. But I remember after Kate finished here, there was a couple forecasts where I just was so frustrated at them, because I'm like, this weather forecast is just completely wrong. This is not what we're seeing right now. This is not what's happening. And I was talking to other sailors around me being like, why are we in this hole when we're supposed to have wind and all this kind of stuff? Yeah. So there was definitely a couple of days of frustration, but I'd say overall, most of the days I did enjoy, and the weather forecasting that they were giving us, and enjoying the simplicity behind it as well.
Yeah, it's some kind of I love the simplicity, but then again, I love also to compare like sophisticated weather models, the European model, like in GFS or Arom, or the mixture of both of the 3 of them. So it makes it really exciting. What made it really particularly challenging is the weather forecast we received for the zones. They only gave the weather forecast in the middle of the zone, but not, and the zones are pretty big,
They're big zones.
They're big zones. So, like about 100 miles further south or further east, like the conditions can be completely different from what has been forecasted for that zone. So it was a very interesting exercise. But honestly, I loved the simplicity behind it. I loved it.
No, that's great. That's great. So when you pulled into the Canaries and you got there, finished leg 1, did you have any big things that you had to work on the boat, like any big repairs or fix anything, or what? Or were we just focused more on like the mental aspect of it, or how'd that go for you?
Repairing. Repairing I did mainly on the first 4 days, because I had a hole in my spinnaker, so I had to tape that one. But you can do that in a half an hour, so it's totally fine. And then, but what took a bit more time was to repair the spinnaker pole. At the beginning, the first 4 or 5 days. But afterwards, after we went around the Cap Finistère, everything went smooth, actually. So I could focus on the sailing.
I'm just curious about, like, when you were in the Canaries after finishing, did you have to finish the repairs on that spinnaker pole, or was there anything else that you had to replace?
No, I only had to repair my spinnaker.
Okay, just the spinnaker.
That's the only thing.
That's not bad.
No, that's bad. And the other were like small stuff, to took me like 2 days. Small repair works, but basically I didn't change anything on the boat. I was pretty happy how it worked out, and no
That's
major
great.
changes. Yeah.
So when the start of leg 2 came around, what were you thinking mentally? Were you ready for it? Were you excited for it? What was your thought process at that point?
I think I was far more relaxed than at the first stage, but I think that was for most sailors, which is quite normal because the first stage you use to gain confidence, also to see whether the boat is reliable. Because usually, if you make the first stage, usually you also make the second stage, and especially with the series. And now being at the start, I was simply happy to continue because the break is pretty long, I find.
Yeah.
I think like 3 weeks on the Canary Islands. But I went back home, but just to see my family and also my son, because otherwise it would have been a bit too long. But I was simply happy to leave the port and just to get on the other side.
So what were the first couple of days of that race like for you? Because you remember the boats were pretty close together that first night, and then going around one of the islands there, boats started spreading out, some going north, some going along Rumline, some going south. What was that like for you?
I completely messed up the start because
what happened?
Basically, I hate to sail in low wind conditions, and we had basically no wind at the start.
Yeah, I would say it wasn't low wind; it was no wind. We were drifting.
Yeah, it was no wind exactly. It was so frustrating, and I did not manage to get my boat going. I think I was last or second last at that moment, and with the 2 other maxis, and it was really frustrating. And then I remember, going down to El Hierro, but there I managed to catch up with the other boats. But behind El Hierro, I think that was a crucial moment where the fleet started spreading. I think you took the south option, if I remember well. Yeah, exactly. And then I was at the beginning more hinging towards to use the north route. Because that was also based on the forecasts and also the models I've been using before leaving the Canary Islands. All the routing they were pointing towards the north, and that was also my initial plan. But based on the forecast that we received that day, I made up my mind because my understanding was that the north front was a bit more northern than initially forecasted. And also the pressure behind the northern front wasn't that high as initially forecasted. So I thought, okay, it doesn't make sense to do the extra mile if the pressure isn't that good as initially forecasted. So I stick with the middle option, so between the southern route and the northern route. So
which can be dangerous there in the middle route there, because there was an area of low wind, so you couldn't go too far down.
I couldn't go too far. Anyway, it was a bit of a complicated situation, and for me the southern option wasn't really an option for me, because I found that you had to first go through a no wind zone before you can profit from the high pressure zones further south. And so you have to do some extra miles, and then after having done the extra miles, you have to catch up with speed. And this is not my strongest point to create a lot of speed over 24 hours. So I thought, okay, I don't want to take that risk. So I wanted to play it safe, and I chose the option to stay as close as possible to the direct route. So that was my thinking. And also the northern route, because there was not that much pressure in the northern part. And also they were announcing, let's say, bad weather. So with how you call it, with
was it not bad. I'm trying to think what bad weather, like squalls
Yeah, kind of
or
squalls.
like
Yeah,
thunderstorms.
yeah, thunderstorms. Yeah,
Okay.
thunderstorms, and I wasn't very comfortable about sailing in thunderstorms. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's why I opted for the option close to the middle route, in between. Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah. It's interesting hearing because I've talked to a couple people now, and everyone has a slightly different thought process of why they went a certain way. And it's interesting that you thought that was more the safer route, whereas I went farther south, and I thought that was more of like the safer, more conservative route based
Mm-hmm.
off the trade winds. But it's just interesting how we look at we have a lot of the similar weather models and information, but we all interpret it a little differently for both ourselves and also for our boats' strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting seeing how people take this information that's all available to us and apply it.
Yeah.
I think is fascinating.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, because I was also consideration the strength of my boat, because I didn't see my boat performing well on the southern route
Sure.
out of experience, and that's why I opted for the safe for me the safe choice.
And it honestly seemed like halfway across, it seemed like most of the options all worked out for the people that were able to sail their boats well and still keep the boat speed. It seemed like no matter which way you went, it kind of worked out for a lot of the boats. You just had to keep the speed up the whole time.
Yeah,
and really push the boat hard. And if you pushed your boat hard, whether you went the northern, the rum line, or the southern route,
yeah,
indeed, looking at the podiums, like some of the boats that went northern got first, and then this third place boat went the southern route.
Yeah,
very different extreme routes, but still within a couple hours of each other. It's awesome.
Indeed, basically there was no difference. Actually, either you took the northern or the southern route. In the end, the result was more or less the same.
Yeah,
but that was also quite interesting. Yeah, and also for the same type of boats, the maxis that went north and the maxis that went south, they're basically the same.
Yeah,
the same speed. Yeah,
yeah. So that was cool, pretty cool to see afterwards on the tracker. So on this leg 2, what do you think was the hardest part for you on the leg?
The hardest part, I think, was quite at the beginning after day 5 or 6.
You lose track of them out there.
yeah, it's difficult to track the days. But when the trade winds were kicking in, the state of the sea was quite challenging with the waves. We had this 2 weather system that were colliding. And then you had also the waves coming from the north, and those coming with the trade winds, and the state of the sea was quite challenging. I don't know how you experienced it, but I had a really tough time to perform well on the boat, and also to use the autopilot. I couldn't use the autopilot in those kind of conditions because
I definitely agree with you on some of that. So you were just wiping out a lot.
Mm-hmm. So I had to steer all the time, and then sometime you need to rest,
Mm-hmm.
And also I had then finally I took the decision to reduce the sails, so to put the mainsail, to reduce the mainsail, and also to put a medium speed, especially with the pointy noises. It was far easier to handle them in those conditions.
Yeah, but when you reduced the sail area, do you think you really went that much slower? Or do you think did you go the same speed just because the boat wasn't, digging the bow into the next wave or anything like that? Or how did your speed compare, do you think?
I think on average, you're about the same in the end, but it allows you to preserve the skipper. You can do that. I think that was for me the most important part. My goal was to make it to the other side. And in order to make it to the other side, you have to preserve yourself. And so I prefer to take the safe choice and make the boat work, and to stabilize the boat, and to have good average speed. Maybe it wasn't that high, my average speed, but at least I could keep my average speed without broaching, because a huge issue was, of course, all the time broaching under those conditions, especially with the big speed.
Yeah, and for that, it wasn't necessarily the wind doing it. It was the waves just picking up the boat and just throwing. Yeah. I remember the waves would just pick up the boat and just throw the stern over, and you wipe out and you broach, even though it was only blowing maybe 20 knots, which wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. That was so frustrating. And really made it hard the first days. And then I think another challenge was, of course, the squalls during night. I know how you experience it, but I had this super big squall during night that made my boat broaching. It was 90 degrees on the water. The mast almost touched the surface, and I was attached on my line, on my lifeline, and I was partly with the 2 feet in the water. It was really scary. It was really, really scary, and so I had to cut the lines, and then to get it again back into position, and then to get the boat under control. But it was a very, very scary moment, and I told myself I don't want to experience that anymore. And I think it was pretty challenging, especially during night, to see the squalls coming, because especially there were some nights you can't see them. There were some nights that were pretty dark. It was very difficult to see the type of squalls coming up, forming in front of you or catching up with you. Because mostly they were catching up with you, and some of them were gentle. They weren't that strong, but others they were pretty intense.
Yeah. So did you end up breaking anything on this leg, or did the boat survive? How was that?
The boat survived quite well. Did quite well. I had only with my SPI, I had to repair my SPI. There was again a hole in my SPI, but I have to admit the SPI wasn't the newest at the beginning anyway, and I knew that would come at some point of time. It would handle everything, but that's why I tried to balance between the medium SPI and the SPI max.
That's smart.
So not to preserve at least the big SPI, because the medium SPI was anyway was a bit thicker, so it was a bit more reinforced, so it could handle the pressure. That wasn't a big issue, but for the big SPI it was a bit more challenging.
No, that makes sense. So after all those days at sea, you're sailing across the Atlantic. I mean, it probably took close to almost 20 days to go across, maybe 18, something like that. Can you describe what was it like approaching and crossing the finish line in Guadeloupe? What was that like for you?
That was super emotional. You're just feeling relieved. All the pressure you had on your shoulders, just you can drop it. And because if you, I rewinded all the difficult moments that I had to go through, like the fire, also the fact that I didn't qualify for 21, and I said to myself, come on, you did it, You spent so much time in this project, you invested so much time, because also it's meaning the time you spend in this project is also this time you spend less with your family.
Yeah.
And so everything you did was not for nothing. Imagine I wouldn't have made it to the other side. I would have been super frustrated, especially so that would, all the time you have spent, this time you couldn't have spent with the family, that would have been for nothing in that sense. So I was super relieved and so happy, so happy that I made it to the other side, because under those conditions, it wasn't very easy. But then again, for everybody, it wasn't easy. Everybody had to overcome their own challenges, and that's the beauty about the Mini Transat.
Absolutely,
the different profiles, the different objectives, and that makes it super emotional.
I mean, it's emotional for everyone. Every time one of the skippers crosses the finish line and then gets onto the pontoon and arrives, it's an unbelievable experience. I think it's also really interesting too is, when you show up to the dock, I don't know how it was for you or when you pulled in, but there's always just so many people there, and everyone starts putting your sails away. It's a simple thing of rolling your sails when you get there and just helping out a little bit with the little things. I think it's just a really great environment and attitude and spirit behind the Class Mini. So I'm sure you probably saw that when you arrived at the pontoon.
Yeah, that's also a thing I really love about the Class Mini is the spirit. We are, it's like a big family, and as you described it correctly, as soon you arrive in the port, everybody's coming, cheering, giving you a drink. That's the first thing I want to have.
A little tea punch,
a little tea punch, and then everybody taking care of you, tidying up your boat. That was super cool, and And that's what I really love about this the Mini Transat spirit, and that's part of the experience, and that's really great. And because we know everybody has to overcome their own challenges, and everybody knows how difficult it is to set up such a project to get to the other side, to get to Guadeloupe. And that's really lovely. That's the thing I'm gonna miss the most, is the spirit of the Class Mini.
Oh, for sure, definitely. Speaking of Guadeloupe, how did you like your time there? You probably spent a week or two there, I'm guessing, after the race? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, because it was a really lovely time, just to cool down, and just to, the first day I didn't talk that much about the race, because I told myself I need a bit some time to reflect on what I experienced. And then I think only after a few days I opened up a bit more and more to talk a bit more in depth about my experience. But also my wife, she came over to Guadeloupe, and we spent like an amazing time there. It was pretty short, only 4 or 5 days, because afterwards she had to go back because she had to work. But it was an amazing time, like just to catch up and then see each other, and to profit also from the good weather.
Definitely.
Just live the vibes that were on the island, because every evening there was a different party, there was something going on, and everybody was going crazy, about arriving in the Caribbean, and that was pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's definitely a special environment there, and you just have that stronger connection with everyone that did the race as well when you're all there. So that being said, would you ever do the Mini Transat again? Do you think you'll ever do it again?
I don't think that I will do it ever again, because also my personal situation, having now a family, and also living in Luxembourg, it's far away to set up that kind of project. If I would live closer by, that would be a different story. But under this condition currently, no. But if I could do it again, I would probably do it in a more on a boat that would perform on the performance boat. So be the Maxi or P3, just to get a feeling of racing a bit faster.
Yeah. So I'm guessing. So would you recommend this race to other people that might be listening that are thinking about doing the Mini Transat or jumping into the Mini world? Would you recommend it for others?
Definitely. If you're really into offshore sailing, if you love solo sailing, yes, just go for it. and it's also great that you're doing this podcast, because a lot of non-French speakers, I don't know, it's very difficult to go to find information about the Mini Transat, because still the race is, it's heavily influenced by the French sailing culture. And I think for a French-speaking guy, it's very easy to find information about the Mini Transat. But for non-French speakers, might be a bit more difficult. And that's why it's great that you're doing this podcast about the Mini Transat to open up the world of the Mini to non-French-speaking community. And that's great work that you're doing, because I've also been listening to the 2 other podcasts. That's great to have the insights of the various skippers who have been involved in the Mini project.
Hey, I appreciate you saying that. It's been fun doing these interviews, and I mean, I'm really trying to get as many people that have done the race, either this past edition or other ones, just because everyone has their own story. It's all so different. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from each other, and definitely spread the knowledge beyond the French, sailing world. So absolutely. So thank you for saying that. But I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Is there anything else we should have covered? Anything else that we didn't discuss?
I think we're pretty complete. I think we have been now talking for 1.5 hours.
I know. I'm so sorry for taking all your time. I really appreciate
it's totally
you.
Fine, but I love those kind of exchanges, and it's like it's a lovely idea, your podcast, and I'm so happy that I can also contribute to your podcast, and also because what's also great about the Mini, even if we don't speak to each other in 10 years. For 10 years, maybe we cross our paths in 10 years. We remain friends.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. We were one big family, and we did the Mini Transat, and that's like blood brothers. If it's
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Well, hey, Jerome, thank you so much for coming on this. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and good luck with everything, and also good luck with the ongoing projects, and also getting back your boat from Florida to Annapolis. Is that correct?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
That sounds like fun, but I think that will be a no-brainer to get that boat out.
Definitely. All right,
Okay.
see you.
See you, Peter. Thank you.
Well, that's it for episode 15. Don't forget to sign up for my email updates, pgnoceanracing.com. You can still support this campaign. If you can donate through uspatriotsailing.org or through my GoFundMe page, both of which are located on my website. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever, hit the review button, let me say it again. Hit the follow button, and please leave a review. It really helps so that other people can find this podcast as well. And then you can follow me on social media at PGN Ocean Racing, and let me know what you want to hear about or if you have any questions. So send me an email. And thanks for listening to the Mini Transat Mission.